So help us, though. We all think the economy is in a very challenged spot, and yet the traveling has not stopped.
Yeah, look, I think for us, we're still setting records. And I think we're probably going to have a we're basically a mild recession induced by the Fed. But there's another trend that's happening, which is there was this over-indexing to hard goods away from services. During the pandemic, you couldn't travel, you couldn't go to restaurants, couldn't get your hair cut. You spent all the money on home refurnishings and online. And those businesses are now coming back to the normal trend, and the services are coming back up. So we're probably in the 8th inning, but we're still in the COVID recovery. So it feels really good if you're in the services.
Is there any sign that things are shifting at all?
No,
so when you say that there's going to be a recession, is that just because everybody else says there's going to be a recession, or is that because you see some numbers that say, okay, the dashboard's flashing red?
I spent the weekend here in D.C., and when I talked to people in politics, I started saying if I didn't watch CNBC in the morning, which I do, the word recession wouldn't be in my vocabulary. Just looking at our data, but you just can't see it in our data.
And they're going to cause one. Do you see the Delta pilots?
Yep.
Yeah. So look, I think that's actually for us, for the big airlines, that's good news. It is a really rich deal.
But I guess they're not. They deserve it. But what was it? 35%?
34%. But it also, what's happened because there's a pilot shortage in the airline industry. We have real cost convergence going on. Low-cost carriers used to pay their employees less and use that to have lower fares. They can't hire people now unless they get really close to being competitive with us. And what that means is it winds up being like oil has been historically a pass-through. Now, from an inflation perspective, that's an issue.
But in the warped mind of the Fed, that just means they got to go further to make sure that they...
Yeah, I read this morning Fed Governor Waller, talking about this phenomena of companies having to give pay raises, then needing to raise prices, and that's how...
Right. In terms of your ability to continue to raise prices, though, on seats, for example, are you seeing any shift at all? I mean, look, we were talking to Andy Jassy last week from Amazon. He was saying people who used to buy, a really big TV, they might be trying to find a marginally cheaper TV.
So here's what's happening for us. We've got, first, airfares, if you went back 10 to 15 years, in real terms, are still 40% lower. Mm-hmm. Prices have really come down. So we're coming up from a low bottom. But the second thing that's happening is this hybrid work makes every weekend a holiday. People that always had the money to travel, people that work in Manhattan, but they used to be tethered to their desk Monday to Friday, 9 to 6. They couldn't go away on weekend. Now they can leave on a Wednesday, Thursday, work remotely. So what we see is people that always had plenty of disposable income to travel now have the freedom from a time perspective, and they're the ones that are traveling more. I think there really is a structural change for air travel because of that. What
about business travel? Is that coming back? Because that's the more profitable.
That's the flip side of the remote stuff. I mean, people don't go to...
One, I think the old metrics are probably wrong because you see people doing what I just described. You see people that that traded a 2-hour daily commute into San Francisco by car for a once-a-month 2-hour commute by air. They live in Boise and come back to the office once a month. So business travel is really, it's hard to call what it is. But our data that we look at, feels like business travel, and this is probably indicative of pre-recessionary kind of behavior, has plateaued, even though our total revenues are still going up. We think there's probably more room to run on it once people have more confidence about the economy.
What does that mean for profitability? Because, again, the business travel was always the most profitable.
So we're going to, in the fourth quarter, our guidance, was we're basically back to 2019 profit margins, which was near an all-time high for us. So we're, even with recessionary environment, even with high fuel prices, we're coming back to near all-time record profit margins. I mean, really have been structural. One, I think demand is structurally higher in the aviation industry. Supply is structurally lower because of, it's not just supply. Boeing, Airbus are behind, air traffic control. Structurally, supply is lower, higher demand. Econ 101, that's really good.